Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today here in person and virtually from somewhere else for today's SOUP, the third of the academic year. For those attending here in person, I believe we're serving a delicious cheesy broccoli soup. And there's always plenty of soup, so feel free to have seconds and even thirds if you're hungry. Proisa and I also passed out some sign-up sheets if you would like to subscribe to Soup with Substance. You'll get our weekly reminders for the new soup, and also I believe there's some stickers from the Center for Peacemaking if you'd like to take some home. But yeah, that is it. Parisa is going to take it from here and introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone in person and online. Thanks for joining us. We're really excited to have the students present today. I am Parisa, the Program Associate with the Center for Peacemaking. As many of you all know, we provide fellowship opportunities to students every summer, and those can range depending on projects and student interest. So students are able to do an internship, which today we'll have an opportunity to hear from 3 students on their internship placement sites from this summer and the work they were able to do. And then we also have other students who take their fellowship in a different direction. Some students do creative art projects. We've had in the past, students do art displays. We've had photo exhibits. We also have some students who are really passionate about research. And so the funds that we allot to students can be used to do community research or work with a faculty member at the university. And so if you're a student in the room or on the call, and are interested in understanding how that could be something for you during your Marquette experience, I would love to talk to you about that. And specifically for today, we're excited to have 3 students present on domestic peacemaking internships, but do know that if you want to do international work as well, that is possible. Our first speaker today is going to be talking about how she was able to do some work for international organization domestically in the US. So we provide support for all student interests. So we're excited to get into it. And if you have any questions, feel free for those who are online to put it into the YouTube live chat, and I can ask the students to answer those questions. And then for those in the room too, if you have specific fellowship questions, we can answer that. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with our first speaker. And our first student today is Raquel Torres. She is a political science and Latin American studies major at Marquette and was able to intern with Programa Velasco, which is going to be an example for students to understand how you could still be partnering with an international organization, but doing domestic work. This was because of the nature of the pandemic this year. We have had some students placed internationally, but we're excited to get into Raquel's experience. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, my name is Raquel Torres. I'm a sophomore here at Marquette. I'm double majoring in political science and Latin American studies. And I was introduced to Programa Velasco through the Latin American Student Organization here on campus. I'm a member of that organization, and they had sent out information about the internship through an email, and that is how I got connected. So Programa Velasco is a nonprofit organization that is based in San Ramon, El Salvador. Their mission statement is to educate and empower children and entrepreneurial women in El Salvador to build strong families and create better futures. It was actually founded in 2007 by Annie Boyd Ramirez, who is a Marquette graduate, and Juan Velasco. And the trifecta in El Salvador, the trifecta of poverty, violence, and gender inequity create conditions that cause forced migration, which is what Programa Velasco seeks to address. They're seeking to address these societal level problems on an individual basis through the programs and through the entrepreneurs. They also have another program in La Javia Tepecoyo, which is a rural community in El Salvador, which they established in 2019. Programa Velasco has 2 areas of expertise, the Women's Empowerment Project and their efforts surrounding children and families. The Women's Empowerment Project is a 2-year program that seeks to create greater financial independence through the creation of businesses. The project includes a personal and economic empowerment courses on technical bookkeeping, counseling, and provides entrepreneurs with seed money so they're able to create these businesses. The project seeks to create greater gender inequity in El Salvador by allowing these women to gain financial freedom and to gain more independence through that freedom that they're given. The emphasis on empowerment through the project allows these women to create the confidence to make their own decisions, because they are making their own decisions regarding their businesses and the timeline in which these businesses are created, making the Women's Empowerment Project a sustainable project that these women are able to keep up with after the 2-year project ends. And on the 2 pictures on the slide are actually pictures of the entrepreneurs. The top one is a picture of a workshop, and the bottom one is a picture of the entrepreneurs that are from San Ramon. Their second area of expertise involves their efforts surrounding children and families. So for children and families, they partner with another organization in El Salvador that's called the New Dawn Association of El Salvador. With that, Programa Velasco seeks to increase access and enrollment to their child development center. The center works with families that are impacted by poverty and violence so that their children are given a proper holistic education, and that these families know that their children are being safe and taken care of throughout the day so they're able to work. The center provides mental health services, workshops, and family support services, and their approach to child care is trauma-informed. They focus on child development, gender equality, and creating more social cohesion. So some of the tasks that I worked on throughout this internship, one of the first things I worked on was a mailing project. Every year, Programa Velasco sends out magnets to their donors that are based in the United States as a way to show appreciation for their gift. So they had sent me the materials to create these magnets, and I had put them together and sent them out from my address because it would be easier for me, because I'm based in the United States and Programa Velasco staff is based in El Salvador. I also worked on a grant application for the gender-based violence prevention, protection, and accountability in El Salvador that was put on by USAID. So for the grant, Programa Velasco was seeking to partner with another organization called Partners El Salvador to implement prevention services. These services seek to increase gender equality in the country by providing the women entrepreneurs with the self-efficacy skills needed that would remove them from the position of powerlessness that would create the conditions for gender-based violence. Another thing that I had worked on throughout the internship was the translations of blog posts. These blog posts helped put a lot of the work that I was doing into context, because I was able to gain more insight into the Salvadorian context that Programa Velasco was working with. And I was also able to learn more about the lives of the individual entrepreneurs. One blog post that I worked on in particular was called "The Challenges of Coloring and Drawing for Rural Salvadorian Women." This blog was about the rural women that live in Tepecoyo. These women face a unique situation involving education, because most of these women were not able to finish their high school diploma, because most of them had dropped out of school at an early age. This is due to the expectation in Salvadorian culture that women are meant to be caregivers, so they would drop out at an early age to take care of their families. Because of this, women can often feel insecure when doing an activity relating to school or an activity that's to their own benefit, because they had spent their lives taking care of other people. So for the workshop, Programa Velasco staff had the women draw and color as a way to inspire creativity and as a way to build community with the other women. As the workshop went on, the staff had noticed the women were feeling insecure about their drawing abilities and were afraid that their drawings weren't going to be good enough, or that they didn't really know what they were doing, so they weren't engaging with the material. The staff had noticed this was happening and stepped in and had them instead go back to the basics and work with the material and just and gave them free range to work with whatever material they wanted, just to get comfortable with the experience. Through this, they exemplified the Latin American liberation theory of accompaniment, which emphasizes walking alongside people and helping them through the process instead of taking it over and doing things for them. The theory of accompaniment helps these women develop their own businesses on their own timeline and provides them with the skills to do them themselves, instead of having Programa Velasco staff step in and do the whole thing for them. Through this, these women are able to continue their businesses even after the project ends. And there's actually a picture on the slide of the woman in Tepecoyo holding their drawings. And the graphic at the bottom was part of the grant application and shows how Programa Velasco seeks to address gender-based violence through their programs. The Salvadorian context that Programa Velasco works in is unique and multifaceted. The Salvadorian Civil War lasted from 1979 to 1992, and the effects from the Civil War infiltrated themselves into the Salvadoran society. The violence and poverty that occurred as a result created a collective trauma in El Salvador that has never been fully addressed. I actually have a personal connection to Programa Velasco and their mission because my dad was born in San Miguel, El Salvador, and was immigrated to the United States in the early 80s as a result of the effects of the war. Because my dad is from San Miguel, my family and I had actually planned a trip to visit family in El Salvador long before I discovered I would be interning with Programa Velasco. But it just happened to fall on the same summer during my internship, so I was actually able to visit their office in person in San Salvador. It was a really fulfilling experience because I was virtual the whole time and I was able to meet my supervisor in person. There's actually a picture on the slide of me, my dad, and my two staff members, Catherine and Christian. And I was also able to meet one of the entrepreneurs that the program works with. The entrepreneur that I met her name is Blanca, and she had graduated from the project a few years ago. Blanca runs an ice cream business in her home in San Ramon, but they are unable to sell their ice cream in their neighborhood, and her husband has to walk an hour to the city center every day to be able to sell their ice cream. This is because of the fear of gang control in the neighborhood. If MS-13 were to find out that Blanca has a business and that business is profitable, they would charge a rent to Blanca and their husband to be able to sell. Programa Velasco understands the situation that they are working in, and because of that, they don't promote the women that have worked through the project, because they know that if these women's names were to get out there, they would be subject to gang retaliation in their own neighborhood. This is so important because Programa Velasco is able to understand the context that they are working in, because the staff is comprised of Salvadorian nationals. Because of this, they practice an understanding and companionship with the entrepreneurs, that because they understand the specific barriers and the best way to guide them through the process, because staff also has grown up in the Salvadorian context and knows how the trauma has affected their lives. Because of this, Programa Velasco is able to act as a catalyst for challenging gender roles in communities interested in change, and is able to affect generational poverty because of the skills that they are providing these women with. And the bottom picture is actually a picture of me, my cousin, Blanca, the entrepreneur, and my dad. And she gave us some of the ice cream that they sell, and it was delicious. Programa Velasco, because of their commitment to cultural humility, Programa Velasco understands the specific cultural expectation that these women face. Being a woman in El Salvador can be an isolating experience because women are expected to be housewives and caregivers and nothing more. When women are able to converse in another group of women, their discourse isn't valued and it's seen as unintelligent. Because of this, women that are in situations where gender-based violence occurs can often feel isolated from the other women in their community and feel like they're the only ones going through this experience. Programa Velasco provides a safe space for these women and allows the entrepreneurs to build community with each other and to build solidarity with each other. Because these women know that they have a group of support from the women around them, they're less likely to stay in situations where gender-based violence can occur, and they're more likely to remove their children from these situations as well, because they've been provided with the skills that allow them to start their own businesses that would grant them financial freedom. It has truly been a heartwarming experience to be able to use the talents that I have to help people in the place where I come from, in the place that my dad calls home, and I will forever be indebted to Programa Velasco and to the Center for Peacemaking and Justice for allowing me to have this experience. Are there any questions?
I came in late and you probably said this, but I wondered how the project was funded and then what relationship or tension there might be with the current Salvadoran government.
So how Programa Velasco is funded?
Yes.
Programa Velasco is funded mostly through donors. A lot of the donors are based in the United States, but there are also international donors and other organizations in El Salvador. They also work with another organization that has their own funding, the New Dawn Association, and they use their offices for a lot of the workshops that they do. As for their relationship with the current Salvadorian government, Programa Velasco is a nonprofit and it's not really associated with any government entity, but the new government has created some roadblocks to Programa Velasco's mission, but that just shows why Programa Velasco is so important even now.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions?
I was in El Salvador during the war, and we have a sister, our Lutheran synod here in Greater Milwaukee has a companion relationship with the Lutheran Church in El Salvador and some of the communities. So I just want to thank you for going, and I'm glad I could meet you and hear your story.
Of course, thank you very much. As I had mentioned, I do have a personal connection to Programa Velasco's mission, just because my dad is from San Miguel and his family grew up during the war. So I'm very well familiar with the effects of the war and how it has affected the country as a whole. So thank you.
Any last questions? I'm not sure if virtually, if we have any questions being submitted on YouTube Live either, feel free to use that chat to submit any questions. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Raquel. So we are going to now move on to our next speaker for today. And as they transition to the front, we are going to have Litzy present on her experience with the Chicago Religious Leadership Network on Latin America, CRLN for short. They are based in Chicago. And so that is a partnership that the Center for Peacemaking has had for many years as well. So for the students in the room and those online, if you're interested in potentially doing that for next summer, you'll have an opportunity to learn about what Litzy's experience has been. We've placed students there for the last 3 years, and it's been a really robust experience for students, each summer looking a little different. So if that's something that catches your eye and you would like to learn more about it, we would love to connect you. And I will let Litzy take it from there.
Hello, my name is Litzy, and I'm a social welfare and justice and Spanish major. As she said, I was partnered with Chicago Religious Leadership Network on Latin America. Although I am from Chicago suburbs and had the opportunity to go into the office, they did let me work remotely. So a lot of my work was done online. So CRLN's mission is focused on building partnerships among religious social movements and communities within and between the US and Latin America. They seek to align US policy with the goals of social movements in the US and Latin countries. Their engagement includes public policy advocacy and educating minority communities on social issues that impact their own communities. And a lot of their focus tends to be on Cuba and immigration, but they also do have programs that help Central America and Colombia. My main task was to research and help them with interviews and articles to write for their website. So I didn't have a specific project to focus on. But I did tend to focus on Cuba and then the Gary Chicago Airport. So starting off with Cuba, I was lucky enough to experience the outcry on social media with the UN vote that happened in June. With this, the history of Cuba and the US brought a lot of attention into questioning whether Cuba should remain on the terrorist list. It is no secret that Cuba has lost millions of dollars, even billions, due to the embargo, and has led to an increase in poverty in Cuba. Many people against the embargo were happy once former President Obama seemed to lessen the sanctions that were put on Cuba. That included less restrictive travel, Cuban Americans being able to send unlimited funds to Cuba, and taking Cuba off the terrorist list. With touristic travel, Cuba was able to make money and provide for their own communities. This changed once former President Trump took office. He reinstated the travel restrictions and the US sanctions. Many saw this as a major setback and provided even more loss for Cuba. One major hope that those against the embargo had was that President Biden could make a difference with his UN vote. The thought that was that Biden worked very closely with Obama and knew a lot about the Cuba embargo and the differences that it made once President Obama lessened those sanctions. But they were let down once again when Biden abstained from the vote. With this, there was a lot of social pressure put on Biden. Like we've seen with many other social issues, social media started talking about the effects of the embargo that it had on Cuba. And with the UN vote taking place on June, I was able to write an article to further educate those on the Cuba embargo and the history behind it, and also the result of the vote. And then moving on to my second task, it was to research the Gary-Chicago airport. So not many people know that Chicago actually has a third airport, but it is based in Indiana, in Gary, Indiana. It was very hard to find information about the Gary-Chicago airport, which led me to interview Ruth Needleman, which is the face of the protests that happened against the airport. The main problem with the airport is its connection to ICE. The airport itself does not provide any commercial flights, meaning that most of their money is coming from the flights used to deport people from Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Kentucky. The main thing that Ruth Needleman wanted to drive was that these deportations are coming from detention centers, not from prisons or jails. So her focus on it was that prisoners and people with crime are in prison and in jail and not in these detention centers. While I was researching this, I found out that the Gary-Chicago airport is covering up the deportations. A lot of people didn't know that these deportations were happening because of its contract that it has with ICE. The contract that ICE has is connected with the airline itself, so it's technically not related to the airport, and the airport just buys them out. It is highly supported by Chicago because it is used to perform the flights that O'Hare and Midway do not want to do for political interests, as well as not wanting to already clog their busy airports. She addressed that the concerns that arise for the communities near the airport. At first, the airport was thought to provide development in these poor areas of East Chicago and Gary, Indiana. But it has not done that. Instead, these small cities near the airport have suffered from pollution and poverty. What I found very interesting about the Gary-Chicago airport was that it's located near these communities that are full of people of color. And they did not know what was going on. They did not know about the Gary-Chicago deportations. And once they did, they were able to protest and help Ruth against these deportations at the airport. These protests happen every Friday at 2 p.m. because they found out once they bring in the buses full of people, and they wanted to protest when they were showing up to show their support for the immigrants being deported. And then this is just a map to show how close Gary is to Chicago. So East Chicago is technically in Indiana. It is the border between Chicago and Indiana. but the airport itself is in Indiana. And this helps because of the Illinois being a sanctioned town for immigrants. So being in Indiana helps them continue to deport people. And then my fellowship focused on building connections with governors and mayors to bring awareness to these topics, putting this nonviolent approach to educate those with more authority. They encourage supporters to write letters and call governors, and if possible, to donate to the organizations that support immigration and the Cuba embargo. The Center for Peacemaking has a goal to build strong and inclusive communities, and I strongly believe that CRLN's mission is doing that exactly. If anybody does want to learn more about CRLN and their progress on Cuban immigration, feel free to visit crln.org. I was lucky enough to participate in a fellowship that closely relates to my major. I saw the social impacts in both topics that had and how others tried to help. It has helped me think about my future goals and wanting to be an attorney, but to focus more on communities that don't have those resources. I have learned a lot about international affairs as well as problems in the US that are not talked about. I now continue to keep up with these topics and hope that the article that I wrote and the interview that I conducted help CRLN in educating those that are interested. I encourage all of you to apply for a summer fellowship and learn more about how you could help in communities and make a difference.
See, does anybody have any questions? And virtually as well, I see that there's 10 folks online. Feel free to use the chat to submit any of your questions.
Were you able to have any, like, did you travel to the airport yourself? Did you have any face-to-face contact with your interviewees, or was everything for you virtual this summer?
It was all virtual for me. The interview that I conducted with Ruth was through Zoom. So I did get to like speak to her directly. And she also brought more people that usually are regulars at the protest to tell me more about the airport itself.
Okay, thank you.
One question that I'm curious about, Litzy, is did you get to speak with any of the families who were being impacted by the deportations that were happening at the Gary Chicago airport?
So no, a lot of these families don't know when their family members are being deported. They are more, because the airport tries to cover up these deportations, they set up different times and they usually travel to the airport at night and keep them there at the airport to fly them out. So it's very much a secret when they get deported, and even like when they have changed the times of when they deport people because of the protests in front of the airport itself.
Thank you. Any last questions?
I have a question. It's not very well formed in my head, but I'm just going to ask. And this would be for both speakers. In the course of you doing your internships, how are you able to connect sort of the history of US involvement in El Salvador and Central America to the work you were doing? Did that have any impact as you worked with governors, and other folks who were in policymaking, decision places? So this is happening now in real time to real people. So I don't want to diminish that in any way, but in terms of, working with folks, how do we connect this to a history and take responsibility for it? Because a lot of what we're seeing comes out of US policy over a long number of years. So the push factors for immigration, but also what people are being deported back to.
Yeah, so I know that CRLN tend to focus on how to progress the issue. They know that it is very hard to end it completely, but they have done things like, I know in August when I sadly had to leave, they started a writing letter campaign to write to governors, and they have a lot of support like around the US from donors, and they really want people to advocate for them, because the more the merrier. The more people that know about it, the more that governors tend to talk about the issue and could make a difference. But they do understand that it is a hard topic. Like the Cuba embargo will not end tomorrow, but they hope that it could help bring an end to it eventually.
I'm very sad because I lived in Chicago in the mid 80s and worked with some activist communities. And these are some of the same issues, you know, of advocacy and caring for people and their rights that continue to exist. And so it's just, thank you for doing what you're doing. It's really, really important.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Litzy. I appreciate it. If we can give her another round of applause. Okay. So we have one last student fellowship presentation for today. And that is with Ellie Rice. She is a psychology major at Marquette with double minors in educational studies and peace studies. And we also have the privilege of working with her at the center. She has been working with us since her freshman year. And so I'm really excited to hear your presentation. I'll hand it over to you, Ellie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellie Rice. Like Parisa said, I major in psychology and minor in educational studies and peace studies. I'm a junior here, and I've been working at the Center for Peacemaking since I was a freshman in peace work. So I've been working with a lot of schools in Milwaukee in peace education and being a nonviolent peace educator. So last year, Parisa reached out with a few fellowship opportunities, and I looked into Little Friends for Peace, and it looked like a really cool organization that I would definitely want to be a part of. So just an overview of my fellowship project. So Little Friends for Peace basically works within a variety of communities in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia areas to offer in-person and virtual programs. So their mission is to counter violence and contribute to a worldwide culture of peace by sharing skills to prevent, resolve, and transform conflict with individuals, families, teams, and communities. And they work on this mission through the programs that they offer. So this summer during my fellowship, those programs included in-school and after-school programs, summer camps, which were both in person and virtual, and then other virtual programming, adult peace workshops and trainings, and then also restorative peace circles and international partnerships that we were able to keep up through virtual meetings and events. So this picture here is a picture of MJ Park, who's a co-founder of Little Friends for Peace. And she's just working in a peace circle with some of the young kids during a peace camp. And so some of my personal responsibilities and activities. So one of the first programs that I participated in was an in-person adult peace circle at the McKenna Center, which is located at Gonzaga College High School in DC. So it's a few blocks down from where I was working. And they host a really special program in which they work with a lot of homeless populations in DC, adults. And so they can enroll in this program and commit to coming to peace circles with us twice a week. And then the McKenna Center provides them meals and clothes and other resources. So with this group, we really worked on just general peace education, anger management, and self-awareness skills. And this was a really unique experience for me because I've never worked with peace education with adults. So I was really nervous and was just kind of thrown into it, but it was a really valuable experience for me. I found that these adults were really, really engaged with this curriculum and really wanted to work through a lot of their trauma and a lot of the anger that they've been holding on to. And it was really awesome to watch them form relationships with each other and share personal stories and offer each other advice. And then I also participated in some one-on-one tutoring with children, which was virtual. So this was just a Zoom meeting every Monday throughout the month of June. And it was with the same little girl. Her name was Maria. And she was a third grader who had really fallen behind during the year of COVID. Her school just didn't really follow up about virtual classes, and she didn't have access to a computer. So she kind of missed out on a year of curriculum. She was very quiet at first, but she opened up, and we talked about her teachers and the curriculum that she's been learning at school. And that was also really valuable, just having her know that there's people looking out for her and helping her to get back on track. I actually just talked to her mom via email last week, and she's doing great in school this year. So that was great to hear. And then also Zoom Peace Club. So this was virtual and in-person Peace Clubs. This is one of Little Friends for Peace's biggest programs. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend a in-person one because it didn't fall into my fellowship dates, but I attended some on Zoom. And so a big chunk of my responsibilities were pre-camp arrangements and preparations. So just learning and practicing training of working with kids with trauma. So the guidelines around that, and then skills on social emotional learning, and just specific tools and techniques. And this was a really cool thing to do also because it connected to my work within Milwaukee Public Schools a lot. So using a lot of the same practices, tools, and techniques that I've been using in Milwaukee. And then here is just an example of one of the tools that we use a lot. This is called the Wellness Wheel. So I use it as a check-in for myself before logging on to meetings with kids or walking into a room full of kids, just to make sure that I'm in the right headspace and that I'm thinking about all the factors that go into, teaching kids as like a teacher figure. Everything that you're doing has a big effect on the kids. So like not only what you say, but the way you present yourself, your body language, your tone of voice. So this was a good tool for me to ground myself before working with kids, and also a good tool for the kids. So being aware of how they feel and the people around them, and just thinking about the effect that what they say or how they act has on everyone around them. And then this is just an overview of some of the other peace tools that we really focused on. So the Wellness Wheel, which I just talked about, works on developing personal wellness. And then peace circles, which I showed in that picture of MJ, which just focuses on creating an environment of respect to form healthy relationships with each other and with the kids. And then the peace train is another tool. So here we really focus on the kids using I statements. So like expressing how they feel with I statements. And that works on conflict skills. And then just other cooperative experiences. So cultural enrichment activities, other teamwork activities. And then just some general reflection. So one of the biggest takeaways from this fellowship for me was being able to connect with a new community and work in schools with kids and adults in a new community. Like I have in Milwaukee. That's an experience that I've really valued, getting to know the Milwaukee community, getting to know the school system, the history here. And I'm actually from and have lived in Annapolis, Maryland my whole life, which is about 25 minutes out of DC. But I've never really had the opportunity to engage or get to know with the DC community. So that was a really good opportunity to really get to know a community that's been pretty close to me my whole life, but has definitely felt really far. And then also just gaining some more hands-on experience with both adults and children in peace education. Like I said, working with adults really put me out of my comfort zone, but it was an experience that I really, really valued, and just more hands-on experience with kids. And then also one big takeaway for me was really realizing everything that goes into these peace education programs, all the training and learning that we had to go through to be able to feel prepared working with kids. And then also just watching my superiors, so MJ and Jerry and Katie, just relentlessly working on these programs to make sure everything's perfect and the kids get the most they can out of them. And then lastly, just forming some really special relationships with the people that I worked with at Little Friends for Peace, and the families, children, and adults that I worked with in DC. And then if anybody wanted to learn more about Little Friends for Peace or just peace education in general. This is a book that was written by MJ and Jerry Park, the two co-founders of Little Friends for Peace. And it's basically just like a comprehensive toolkit of all of the skills and teaching practices that they've learned within their 35 years of experience with peace education. So if you wanted to look more at that, you can check out their website, but it's also available on Amazon if you wanted to buy it. And then if you're interested in interning with Little Friends for Peace or any other summer peacemaking fellowships, you can reach out to Parisa with her email here. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Ellie, for giving everyone a round of applause.
I'm just curious what the biggest difference was for you between working with kids and adults, because I know I've done a few volunteer opportunities like tutoring adults, and I know it's a kind of weird dynamic when you're like a high school or college student. So yeah, just wondering what your thoughts are about that.
So like I said, I was really surprised with how engaged and willing these adults were with the peace education curriculum. I think a lot of times working with kids, especially younger middle school age kids, they don't really want to engage with peace education because they don't really know what it means. So it was surprising for me to see how much the adults valued that kind of curriculum. And one of the adults there was telling me that they've never talked about or learned about how to deal with trauma, how to deal with anger. So this is really some curriculum that a lot of adults have missed out in their younger life. So they really valued those experiences and were really engaged.
Any other questions? I personally am curious, out of all the different lessons that I know that MJ puts together, was there a certain lesson that you really enjoyed or you think that made a really big impact?
Yeah, I would say the peace circle, just the idea of the peace circle is something that I had never really been familiar with. And that was one activity or one lesson that I watched the kids, how engaged they were with it and how they loved it. Everybody got a chance to talk with the speaking stick, and they just loved sharing how they were feeling, what happened to them this morning. And it was a great way to open up camp every day and just set the mood for people being able to share.
Awesome. We have time for one last question. Do you have a question, Marisa? No. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Ellie. So just for everyone to know, we had about 10 fellows this summer. So these are just 3 out of the 10 students, undergraduate and graduate students who are able to complete fellowships with us this summer. So we will have 3 to 4 more students present on Wednesday, October 27th from noon to 1 in the room over AMU 163. So if you're interested in coming to that, those are actually not internship fellowships. So they're more creative based. So we have one student who was able to put together different, she drew different portraits. We have another student who worked around domestic violence. And so there's a whole range of other opportunities that students have engaged in. One who did community research, and that is a pretty unique project as well. So if y'all are interested in coming out, or any of the students on the call or in the room today, if you want to talk about fellowships, like I said earlier, my email address is right here. We can talk about opportunities for you, both domestic and international. Well, thanks everyone for coming. I want to thank Campus Ministry again for all their support of the Soup with Substance programming, and we hope to see you